Close Up is brought to you by the Kia Sorento R, redefining the power of Kia.
Gerry Brownlee, you pulled out all stops for the business community. Are you ignoring these people in the suburbs?
Oh, we pulled out all stops here to work on a plan that had been worked on for 9 months by the Christchurch City Council, because we don't want life in this city to be deserted. This is just a plan. It's not anything that's laid out with a work program to deliver it. That comes later.
Can you understand, though, for those people, and some of whom are protesting out here tonight, they feel that the government is more concerned about the business community and looking after them than those who are still suffering out there in the suburbs?
Well, I think I can understand how they feel because they want things done more quickly. And I made the point in here tonight that don't be alarmed by that protest. It's people asking for progress because they want the city to be better. And we recognise that. We have engaged, as many will know, in the biggest and most extensive land investigation project ever conducted, probably in any city in the world. Now that is now at its completed point. We released that information last week. We hope to release some flooding information next week. All the reasons for there being any slowness are starting to fall by the wayside. And, you know, I've said I think the insurers need to pick it up.
Your house is stuffed, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I don't like talking about my house.
No, I know you don't, but I mean, are you frustrated by how slow EQC and the insurance companies are being?
Well, yes, but I do understand that there is a process that you have to go through, and when you're as close in as I am, you get an appreciation of that. It doesn't stop you having those days where you just think, how's this ever going to work itself out? But, and I know people are feeling that. You know, any suggestion that they're abandoned or that it's not a priority is quite wrong. We had a group of people look at this. We have lots of people trying to work out our way through all of this particular issue, which is largely the repair of properties in the TC3 areas.
You gave a big serve to the insurance companies last week. Do you need to give them another one, or what needs to happen to get this moving?
Well, look, we'll talk with them again. I mean, that was because they were saying this 5 to 8 years thing. I mean, that's just outrageous. And, you know, when you talk to them, some of them are saying it's a lesser period of time. Really, I think what we're saying now is tell us what you need further, information-wise, to go forward. I mean, we did the land assessment because there's 190,000 households in Christchurch. We wanted most of those to be able to move forward. There are around about 10,000, well, actually probably less than that, well less than that, caught up in these particular wrangles at the moment.
Okay, let's have a look at this, at the blueprint for Christchurch. Yeah. Do they really need a convention centre? Do they really need a stadium?
Well, those things are big aspirational assets. At some point, a city that serves 560,000 people need those things. So what we're saying is, why don't we secure the sites, do the planning that makes those things permissible, and then we'll work with the City Council over a period of time to put together a sequenced program for them. But tell you what, if people are making that commitment to stay here, and those protesters are doing that, they want a vibrant city at the end of it.
Okay, look, you did a deal, or you looked at a deal with Sky in Auckland to do a convention centre there. Why not looking at the same thing here?
Well, what we've said tonight is that we want to work with the City Council and the private sector about what's possible. I wouldn't anticipate necessarily a similar deal, but there are commercial opportunities that will come into this. We do want the tourism industry to expand. Christchurch is an important gateway, so we need hotels, for example. Convention centres are a natural sort of, stand alongside for hotels.
But you also know that stadiums do not make money, do they? There's probably none around the country. The hope is you lose as little as possible. Well,
there's a great deal of economic information around about the effect of having a stadium that can take those sort of events. But if I was to prioritise all of these projects, I don't think the stadium would be at the top of it. And people would be rather optimistic to think it might be.
I read on Facebook today, someone suggested they should put a statue of Gerry Brownlee in the square in Christchurch. Do you think you deserve it?
Not enough room.
Gerry Brownlee, appreciate your candour.
Close Up is brought to you by the Kia Sorento R, redefining the power of Kia.
Good evening, welcome to Close Up in Christchurch, and we're here at a party. The big question is everyone in the party mood? Because it's a party to launch a plan. Now, the plan, we're told, will set Christchurch's heritage for the next 150 years. Before the quake, if you bought a postcard of Christchurch, this is what you would see. The Garden City, the cathedral, the trams. So what would your postcard of the future look like if you were getting it in, say, 2032. The new Christchurch would encompass a convention centre, a new stadium and sports complex. It's all very conceptual at this stage. It's a wish list, but the government will make those wishes come true. But looking at the street plan, the two overriding factors, the city will be greener, and those green zones replacing buildings will mean it's also smaller. It took 100 days of action to come up with a plan. Many in the city would like to see the rest of the recovery working at the same pace. Joining me now live is Paul Lonsdale, Central City Business Association. From the wider Communities Action Network is Mike Coleman, and Hugh Pavletich, a retired developer who knows a thing or two about urban planning. Now, Paul Lonsdale, from the business point of view, you've seen this today. A business going to buy into it?
I'm pretty excited. I think the businesses will buy into it. It sets the key projects in a place that people can now make decisions on, and I think I'm really quite excited about it.
This concept of a smaller city, did that need to happen?
It did. We couldn't have retail or commercial business spanning from Sanasif right through to Kilmore Street. It was too big.
The big question though, will a plan like this bring businesses back into the city?
I think with the key assets and the government's backing and the local government's backing, I believe it will.
Mike Coleman, is it important for people who don't live in the central city that this development goes ahead?
Well, it's absolutely vital that we have a really, really good plan for the central city, but we have no plan for the suburbs at all. And people, these 28,000 homes, people have been protesting the CBD announcement at the moment. They have been living for 100 weeks waiting for their homes to be repaired, and nothing has happened.
What about people who would say, unless you have the business community, the central city going well, people aren't going to stay in the city, so the priorities should be central?
Well, there should be both and, shouldn't they? We need a really good central city, but we need folks' homes fixed as well. We've got 600 cases of influenza in the city at the moment, and it's happening on the eastern side. So something has to happen when we've got liquefaction coming through, floorboards, and the worst homes have not been touched. 28,000 homes is a huge amount of homes, and 2 years to wait is just far too long for these folk.
Hugh Pavletich, looking at these plans, as someone who's been in this business, is there anything missing? Is there something you want to see more of?
Well, it's lovely to see these pretty pictures, Mark, after 100-odd days. But what I'd ask is, where are the costings and indicative costings and the indicative timing for these projects? What we can say at this stage is all that we've really got is pretty pictures. But we're going to need a lot more than pretty pictures to get business confidence back into the CBD. We also need to recognise that most of the business now vacated the CBD back on 22 February, and there was hardly a blip to the GDP of the place. Business is just fine, and what my real concern is, and I share this with Reverend Mike Coleman, is the people living in hovels, living out on the beaches at Brighton, in cars, while we're all sitting here wondering about these grand plans in the central business area.
But if they didn't come up with any plans, if they did nothing, the three of you would all be saying, come on government, get on with it, let's get the CBD going. Isn't that true?
Well, look, I think that, look, I'm a TC3 landowner. My house is possibly critically damaged. That does not stop me embracing this plan.
But is it more important that your house is fixed up than where you're going to work?
It's both. They both should actually be done in tandem, and I believe they will. But we've faced a major disaster, and I'm a big supporter of small steps often, get it done properly and do it right.
Mike, things like we look on that plan, the things that they do identify that's going to happen, we see a convention centre and we see a stadium. I mean, they're good things, aren't they, for a city?
Well, I understand they're putting in a covered stadium, and it could be anywhere up to $500 million. I mean, how can they justify putting in a covered stadium when 28,000 homes have not even been repaired, the worst homes in the city? A covered stadium when we've just spent $30 million on a stadium in Addington, it seems almost absurd.
So for you, it's a question of priorities. You're not saying it's a bad plan, you're just saying you'd rather see other things done first.
I'm saying a covered stadium at this stage will be like a millstone around our neck. Look, the AMI stadium before the quake was running at a $45 million loss. Why are we putting in a covered stadium at the moment? Let's wait 8-10 years. Sure, we might need one in the future, but it's the last thing that we need. The City Council couldn't even afford to pay a couple of $1 million rates relief, and now they're going to put in a covered stadium. It's one of the most obscene things I've heard.
This is a sports-mad city, it's a sports-mad province. If they didn't put in some facility to accommodate the status of what I'm sure they consider
got a facility.
The Crusaders
They couldn't even fill it up 2 weeks ago. Why would we put in another facility in our city when we've just built a brand new stadium that we can't fill up because we want a couple of tests at Tier 1 tests of Australia and South Africa? I mean, that's kind of... So anyone listening to this will think, you've got to get your priorities right, and it's people and homes first before the CBD.
But Hugh, if you're designing your ideal city, which is what this is, isn't it? This is the ideal city centre. Don't things like stadia and convention centres, which pull in the dough, have a place?
Reverend Mike Coleman is spot on, people, housing, and then these other playtime things later. The big problem with these rush projects, Mark, and I cannot overemphasise it, is when you rush them, the costs are going to blow out through the roof. And even if we're talking about 800 million, say, in costs now, we've got to bear in mind these things are going to lose probably about 80 million a year, 150,000 households. That's going to cost each household about $500 per year out of their entertainment spend. It is all going to cost, we cannot underestimate that.
Paul Lonsdale, how important to you are things like the stadium, things like the convention centre?
Those things that actually sort of build the community, they're those places that the community can go and meet and be together. I think it's really, really important. Restart the project we put in the city. It was a small beacon of hope. In fact, it became a large beacon of hope for Christchurch. It was a small hub back in the city centre, and it proves the fact that people really want their city centre back.
One of the things they did say today was that the ideas for this came out of the people in this area. They asked for people to come forward with the ideas. I presume there's still room for negotiation. Before we go, what would you want to have a look at? If they're going to say, right, we can tweak this plan, what do you want to see happen?
Well, first of all, we want EQC to be taken hold of and get some kind of strategy to deal with EQC, because everywhere you go in this city, EQC is destroying the rebuild of the city.
Gerry Brownlee's coming on after the break.
Well, he's the Minister of EQC and he's done nothing. All Gerry Brownlee does is deny that there's a housing crisis, an insurance crisis, an EQC crisis. There's no real estate problems. There seems to be like no disaster at all, apart from the things that he wants to see, and that is champagne in settings like this with big functions going. Look, if there's no one in this city, why would they come into a stadium?
Okay, Hugh, what do you think? What would you like to see? If there's anything to be altered on this plan, what should be the priority?
You've got to bear in mind, Mark, that at this very early stage, I have not even seen a copy of it. So it's very hard to comment. And this is going to take a lot of time. There's a lot of money involved here, huge money. And it's going to be the ratepayers of Christchurch who are going to have to wear the consequences of this, as those in Dunedin are currently experiencing. So I would suggest that we cool our heels and examine very closely what is being proposed.
Well, you've got a bit of convincing to do with these guys. I'll leave you to it. We have got Gerry Brownlee coming up after the break. But what do you think of the blueprint? Has the government got it right? We'd like to hear your views. Go to our website or email us at closeup@tvnz.co.nz. And of course, we're on Facebook. Like us there, facebook.com/closeup.